Hey, I want to start this video off by talking about my experience with Louis Vuitton Fall Winter 21 men's, two specific looks, 21 and 28. 38, 21 and 38. Virgil Abloh put these buildings on these shirts, right? Everybody originally, like me, myself, not being fashion educated at the time, thought, hey, what a stupid thing. Like, how would anybody wear this? This is a fashion. Is this what people call fashion? This looks stupid. And many of my Jamaican friends also said the same thing. And I know the internet were kind of clowning Virgil, or at least the parts of internet that I was on. And now that I'm grown up a lot more and I've read a lot more about fashion and I'm a lot more educated and open-minded, I looked into the season and now I realized it was called Ebonics, and it's about like black people occupying European spaces, beating black stereotypes, flipping stereotypes on their head, speaking about Virgil's like childhood and stuff like that. And I always think about this collection a lot. Like I think about it a lot in terms of how far I've come in terms of educating myself, and how funny it is that I kind of was that once uneducated, ignorant person, and now I'm like more educated and more open-minded to things like that. And I always think about this collection in terms of like the general public's opinion on fashion, and it always has me thinking how the average fashion consumer, like on a casual level, they don't really appreciate fashion if it's not wearable or useful to them, in terms of like if they can't consume it. Fashion doesn't really get the respect that other art forms do. And I think fashion suffers a lot from the fact that it's like the only art form that's a basic need in society. Like, basic rights, food, shelter, clothing, right? But most people don't really differentiate between fashion and clothing because there isn't really that much of a difference, but it kind of is. It's more of like the intention and the thought of it, like conceptualizing it, like considering what you're putting on your body, trying to develop your own style, buying things that really mean something to you. That's your entire style. But fashion would be like the real dedicated like study of it and stuff like that. I believe, or like the really considered like thought process behind all of it. Honestly, I don't really know. But because fashion is like everybody just puts on clothes that they need because everybody needs to wear clothes, I feel like fashion gets a really bad rep and people don't really respect it as much as they would respect even something like music, as well as people not actually needing music or dancing or painting to survive or like get through everyday life, because not everybody listens to music, not everybody looks at painting, but everybody wears clothes. And I think that, along with democratization and commercialization of fashion, along with rapid consumerism and capitalism, gives fashion a bad rep and it hurts its reputation, and people just don't respect it. And if people can't consume it, again, they don't see the value of it. I made a TikTok about that, about how if something is on the runway and it doesn't seem wearable, it probably isn't. It's probably only a showpiece, and it's probably only available if you do a private order, but it's probably not meant to be worn. It's probably an actual expression of, a human's thoughts or emotions. I also spoke in Fashion Roadman's Discord a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago at this point. It was a brief discussion about it was a discussion within another discussion about fashion, and there was kind of this understanding that fashion is more of an applied art, and the less consumable it is, usually it gets more to the artsy side, and usually that's when people don't like that type of stuff. So if you look on the latest Junior Watanabe women's collection and how there are like these triangles on them and stuff like that, people looking at it be like, oh, this isn't fashion, how can I can't wear it, it's not, so they won't find the use in it, they won't find the worth in it. The less consumable it is, the less commercial it is. Usually it's on the artsier side, and usually it makes less money, and usually less people engage with it. It's a regular thing for the masses to like the easily digestible stuff more than the more nuanced, deeply thought out, oftentimes more personal or relevant to society type clothing. And that's why easily digested clothes is always more prevalent. They are always more prevalent, even at the highest levels of fashion, because it makes the most money. There's a lot of designers in the past who never cared for the commercial side of fashion and only wanted to express themselves through clothing and make them for people who have similar mindsets as them, but they either go bankrupt or they never get too popular or quit fashion altogether when they see that the main artistic goal is being compromised by commercial demands. There's also designers who barely have anything more to offer than commercially driven pieces or something loosely made with a piece of their childhood life involved, or their life in general. Some designers have actually walked this line between both sides really well without losing their minds. In this video, I'll be going over some really commercial designers, some really artistic, avant-garde designers, and designers who I feel have walked the line in between very well. I appreciate all the support as always, and without further ado, let's get into it. We are going to start with Kim Jones. The brands Kim Jones have worked for include creative director of Alfred Dunhill from 2008 to 2011, Louis Vuitton men's style director from 2011 to 2018, and he is currently the artistic director for men's at Dior since 2018, at Haute Couture, ready to wear, and I believe the fur division at Fendi since 2020. Crazy CV, I know. He himself said, "I'm a commercial designer, but that's not a negative." Which is again true. Nothing is wrong for designing for the masses. Luxury heritage brands usually go for more commercial designers nowadays, or commercial names, cough cough Pharrell, to keep profits going and shareholders and chairmans and other higher ups happy. That's why Kim Jones is literally at two luxury heritage brands at one time, which is insane. The only other case I can really think about that was this popular was Tom Ford at Gucci and Yves Saint Laurent, even though he kind of did that himself because he bought YSL and then went to YSL and kicked Albert Elbaz out. But yeah, crazy CV. I'm bringing up Fashion Roman Discord again. I asked around, I was like, yo, my Kim Jones knowledge really isn't up, and I'm trying to like get a good grasp at as many designers as I can. Can somebody please tell me his design language? Because I feel bad for not knowing. And they were like, bro, there isn't any. There isn't any. His design is genuinely boring as hell. People only like him because he's like the nicest man in fashion or something. And I'm like, okay, I feel less bad now. He's like Mr. Collaborations in the luxury fashion scene. He has orchestrated the Louis Vuitton Supreme collab in 2017. He's done Travis Scott, Air Jordan, Stussy, Denim Tear, Stone Island, Cause, all with Dior, other than the Louis Vuitton Supreme, obviously. For his own brand, he's done Umbro, Nike plenty of times, Converse, and more. High fashion brands collabing with outsiders like sportswear brands usually come down from the luxury price point, which is literally like, it makes it easier to buy it. You get the message. It makes it easier to buy. You do more collaborations, you get a lot of money, you branch out to a wider fan base, and you get more fans, you get more clientele. Now, in terms of its actual clothes and design language, again, it's pretty just mid regular. I guess for the most part, like, it can be described as like British for most of his career, but it's really nothing special. I mean, obviously I'm not a designer, I'm not really critiquing, but I just don't think it's really anything to be remembered like at all. But that's Kim Jones. Moving on to Sabato De Sarno for Gucci. He's the creative director of Gucci Ready to Wear. He has been since May 2023. Now, some lore is required to understand this fully. The previous creative director of Gucci was Alessandro Michele from January 2015 to November 2022 as an internal hire. He was previously designing bags for them since 2002. Michele raised literally billions more than Gucci was making previously when he got there, and it was booming because of his aesthetic's Gen Z appeal. Some rumors say that Michele left to him starting to make less money than Gucci wanted, and they panicked and they kicked him out. Other rumors say that Gucci wanted more unrealistic growth and they felt like Michele's tired ass aesthetic couldn't do it for them, so they kicked him out. But we do know that Gucci was shuffling around a lot of people before and even after Michele's departure, so for sure money was definitely the problem, and Gucci are actually still struggling right now. But they brought in Sabato De Sarno because his style is a lot more composed and normal and digestible, and I feel like they were just trying to make real money fast again instead of taking so much of a risk on Michele, so they brought in a more stable and regular boring designer like Sabato De Sarno. Sabato came in for spring 2024 women's ready to wear, and it was super toned down compared to what Michele was doing. Lots of people thought it was boring, and I thought it was boring luxury as well. This was the beginning of like him trying to push like a color for Gucci as well, like a color for Gucci, you know, this dark red oxblood type color, and that's usually good because that kind of gives your brand a signature. Like Burberry, Daniel Lee tried to push this Burberry blue, which is like this really strong royal blue, Bottega with green, Valentino with red. I don't think the color thing has caught on yet, and a lot of people don't like his brand either, like his Gucci, his version of Gucci. He doubled down on this for the men's collection right after the women's one, and he was basically like, all the people saying my collection is boring, blah blah blah, here go another one for you. I think his menswear was definitely stronger than his women's wear. Not being biased, but I do think he designs better menswear than women's wear as a man. Wow, shocker. But yeah, still, you know, just luxury clothes. Doesn't really feel very specific. I mean, his Gucci kind of does have a look because it just looks like what it looks like, but it's not iconic or anything. And he's only been there for like 3 seasons at this point, or he's done like 4 collections at this point, so give him some time. He just needs a little time. His fall women's resort collection was a snooze fest, the one that came after the men's one. Oh my goodness. Resort 2025 strangely gave strong Michele vibes with certain pieces that were put on the runway and certain styling and even hairstyling choices, down to the set design even. Also interesting how resort collections are meant to make more money. Coincidence? I think not. No, that's maybe a reach though. Spring Summer 25 menswear collection was inspired by surfing along with De Sarno's love for mixing color. It has some prints here and there, but not the most inspiring collection to say the least. He's only had 4 though so far again, so we'll see how it progresses for now, but still super commercial, and he's literally like a commercial hire. Like Gucci panicked and brought him in to try and stabilize the money at least, and they're still going down. The last commercial designer I'm going to be talking about is Ooh, PD's in the Yaki Cup. Tom Ford. Tom Ford. Now, to me, Tom Ford epitomizes what it means to be a successful creative director for a luxury or aspiring luxury brand in the 1990s. Tom Ford was mainly groundbreaking in that he sold more sex and fashion than anybody did up to that point and thereafter. He was also very practical and straightforward in his understanding of the business of fashion, and as such, he has helped further and establish essential selling points for products. Every model has to have a bag. The bag was so important that former Gucci employees that were there during the Tom Ford era said that they literally created outfits for the bags. Like the outfits were the backdrop for the bags, and the bags were the main selling point of every single outfit, every single look. Tom Ford said that when he first came to Gucci, he was the previous chief women's ready-to-wear designer in 1990 before being appointed for creative director in 1994. The very first thing he did was a bamboo-handled knapsack. That was the very first thing he did for Gucci. A bag. Another thing Tom Ford was iconic for was his raunchy ads. You know, his raunchy ads, like the famous shaved pubes into a G logo. Talked about it like twice or three times on this channel at this point. He's also benefited from really popular celebrities wearing Gucci runway pieces on the red carpet, famously like Madonna at the 1995 VMAs in his debut collection, Blue Button Up. His models also very much appealed to the gaze of the opposite sex. This helped to push the ultimate selling point of the Gucci lifestyle, the Gucci man being some sort of powerful businessman or movie star or other affluent man in society who had lots of sex, or the jet-set high-class unbothered woman who had men fawning over her who also had lots of sex. This makes your brand aspirational, right? People desire this life, so they buy into it. They most definitely bought and bought and bought Tom Ford's Gucci until they turned their damn near bankrupt situation all the way around. I almost forgot accessories like perfume, sunglasses, and the likes. These are the easiest things in fashion to buy, and that's why they make the most money. Tom Ford made sure that the accessories department was most definitely in order. Sales for Gucci went from 264 million in 1994 to 880 million in 1996. 2 years! The clothes as well, they were cut in ways that accentuated, gripped and hugged and cupped and, showed off the zones and parts of women's bodies that were very erotic. Men too, It was kind of revitalizing, not necessarily new, because it was the same clothing pieces every other luxury brand was doing, but the cut, the materials, the marketing, the universe built around the clothes made them so desirable, so saleable, and they sold. Gucci was doing so well by the end of that decade that Bernard Arnault, who literally passed up on buying Gucci at the beginning of the 90s, tried spending years and years and years to finagle his way into buying a majority stake in Gucci. And Tom Ford and Domenico De Sole, who was the president and managing director of Gucci America, tried and tried and tried for years to keep him away from getting that majority stake. It was a thing. In the newspapers, in fashion, it was like the worst kept secret. I don't even think it was a secret, actually. I think it was just a thing that everybody knew was going on. But yeah, they did their best for years until it seemed impossible to keep it, because Bernard Arnault, he's known as like the wolf in cashmere. He literally went through Prada to buy Gucci stocks, because Prada was buying from Gucci. And Gucci thought that was going to be all good. But Prada literally bought the stake from Gucci and then sold it to Louis Vuitton. Like he wanted them bad. So it was 100% going to be a losing battle, but then they found their white knight, Francois Pinault, and they sold Gucci to him for $2.9 billion or $75 a share, which was $10 more per share than Bernard Arnault was offering. And it now belonged to his Pinault Printemps Rideau. I don't know how to pronounce that. PPR group. They sold him 40% of the company. And then after that, they left in 2004 because PPR was seeking to take away Tom Ford and Domenico De Sole's executive power in the group and give them power to more suits type of guys, and they weren't having it at all, so they left. Tom Ford left, and then he started his own brand later on, his eponymous label, and he extended the Gucci look at his own brand, and it performed well commercially, I believe, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about his Gucci spell, so we're gonna leave that out. But yeah, Tom Ford is actually super likable, super cool. He's American, he's from Texas, which is like rare to see an American designer that popular at a European brand and that successful. Very, very cool guy. He got all the money that he could, and then he dipped. Real. We're going to move to the more artistic side, the opposite end of the spectrum of commercial. We're going to talk about Hussein Chalayan, right? The Turkish-British designer Hussein Chalayan. According to his website, which kind of is defunct almost, alternative luxury fashion since 1994. This is the type of designers that have his artworks in art museums all over the world. He concerns himself with evolution and the meaning of clothes through involving science and technology into clothing, and how technology can be involved in conversation of the relationship between the body and clothes. And he is also an exceptional tailor. I'm pretty sure he was Savile Row trained. almost 100% sure. That's why he gets, paralleled with McQueen a lot, or he did back then. Now, my knowledge on Hussein isn't the strongest, but I do understand a lot of what he did, so I'm going to give you examples of collections, break them down a bit, and talk about his history. Let's talk about Hussein's Central St. Martin's graduate collection, The Tangent Flows, in 1993. Seeking to explore the ideas of life, death, and decay, he buried many silk dresses that had iron fillings as well in his friend's backyard for 6 weeks before his fashion show, and dug them up like really prior to it. Due to the oxidization of the dresses along with the iron fillings being buried with them, the dresses came out in dirty, rusty hues. The dresses were still beautiful, of course, although they were decomposed and highly textural. McQueen was obsessed with this collection too, and it inspired his Nihilism collection, which was like his second collection ever. He was more jealous than anything because his muse and guardian angel Isabella Blow kind of got obsessed with Chalayan after the show, and he was like, oh, for real, it's like that? Okay, watch this. But anyway, back to Chalayan. His fall 2000 show afterwards produced one of the most famous fashion moments of the 21st century, at the turn of the century too. That's crazy. There are two main talking points of this collection. Firstly, 4 models in gray pencil dresses stepped into a living room like set with 4 chairs, a table, a flat screen, some vases, etc. They took the covers off of the chairs and put them on and wore them as clothes. And the crowd kind of erupted for that, but it didn't erupt, but they applauded for that because I don't think any of them expected that, and that's such a different idea, right? Now, after displaying that, a 5th model walked over to the coffee table, opened up the middle, stepped into the middle, pulled it all the way up to her waist until it came off the ground and the legs folded in. The model secured the table dress around her waist and started walking around with it, and the audience went crazy. It wasn't just art for art's sake. Hussein did make it as a commentary about refugees from war, how they literally have to carry everything out of their house on their back when they're just running away from war-torn zones or dangerous areas, so they literally leave with the entire living room on their back. And this was quite a literal showcase of that. His set designer also said that the goal was for everything to be out of the room by the end of the show, so that's what the notion was there. I would make a link to Demna's 360 show about this with some of Demna's looks, but I think that's maybe a reach. It might be not. But of course, these ideas aren't like the craziest ideas, but it's just the execution, of course. It's just the way how you go about it. It's so interesting, it's so different. I won't say so futuristic, but it really is special how he goes about doing stuff like that. And it's all about your execution that makes you a really special designer. Now, unfortunately, Hussein filed for voluntary liquidation in early 2001 because I believe he owed around $250,000 to people, or pounds, to people who helped put his fashion shows together, like set designers, stylists, and things like that. And this just shows the difficulties with that type of fashion. It's really revolutionary, and it may influence a lot into the future. And the fact that the show happened in 2000 and we're still talking about it, and we're talking about his 1993 debut, you can tell the influence is massive because of how great the work was. But again, this just goes to show that the more strange and avant-garde, if you want to throw that word in there, the more strange and artistic and less consumable the work is, the less you're going to make money, and you're going to fall to the wayside because of the system of fashion. So this is I won't say a cautionary tale, but this is a great example of that occurrence happening. Moving on to another great craftsman in fashion, we have Carl Christian Poell. Now, a lot of you probably know about Carl Christian Poell for one reason or another, drip sneakers, or you're actually just a really big enthusiast of his work. We're going to talk about him. So it's funny enough how he himself said that he strongly thinks he's not an artist and he's a designer, and he's actually based on making artisanal clothes based on fashion design techniques. He wants to make wearable clothes. Carl Christian Poell works with ideas like the relationship between the body and clothes, the innovation of fabrics, how to make really high quality garments through different innovative techniques, the mainstream fashion system, all while remaining independent and very small. And he only presents whenever he feels like it. He does not follow the main fall, winter, autumn, winter, resort in between preseason fashion system at all. He just pops up, super anonymous, gives you what he wants, and then leaves. Less pictures of him on the internet than Margiela. Most people don't even know what he actually looks like. Let's talk about the trilogy of monotypologies. The trilogy of monotypologies was, as the name suggests, 3 collections, with the first one being Spring-Summer 1999, focusing on a part of the specific female body each. This was because when he decided to make a collection for women, he found that women's wear in the fashion system always had to be overdone and overindulgent, or not saying anything at all. He denied that, and he also didn't want to contribute to any type of trend cycle by pushing forward complete looks that may influence how other designers send forward looks on a runway. He was just so anti everything, bro. So he literally spent 3 seasons, 3 collections focusing on one piece of clothing for one part of the body. 1 season for feet, 1 season for bottoms, and 1 season for tops. Again, everybody says they hate the system of fashion. Oh, it's too fast. I don't like fashion. But what do they go about doing it? They might do like, some little commentary on the runway about overconsumption. But this guy literally spent 3 seasons just saying, no, we're gonna do it my way, we're gonna do it slow, you guys aren't gonna get me. It's all about execution. It's all about execution and showing how you go about things, showing your mindset, showing your artistic expression through how you think. That's what makes these designers so interesting. Possibly his most known exhibition yet. Once we talk about Carl Christian Paul, there's one show you guys know we're gonna talk about: Mainstream Downstream, Spring Summer 2004. In June 2003, Carl Christian Paul invited the public as well as many workers in fashion to a bridge above the Naviglio Grande River in Italy. After waiting for some time, the onlookers began to see bodies slowly floating down the river. Upon closer and further inspection, it was realized that these were actually the models fully outfitted in the latest collection, unconsciously floating down the river. Drifting down the river. This collection was a commentary mainly on the quality of mainstream fashion downstream and how it all unconsciously flows in one direction. In his words, this time my theme was mainstream downstream. In the fashion world these days, everything flows in the same direction like a river. When I realized I had been sucked in, it was almost too late, but I abandoned the trends. I wanted to express my sense of crisis regarding my cynicism. The show had mixed reviews on both ends of the fashion spectrum and emotional spectrum. But the fact that I'm talking to you about this 20 years later, yeah, I guess you can see how that turned out. It made its mark and it proved its point. Again, not about the idea, but the execution. His desire for innovation cannot be understated. He has made things like a full taxidermy pig handbag, the iconic drip sneakers, talking about the relationship between us and how we treat our clothes, the unravel pants, where the pants were made of like really light chain stitching in a spiral to the point where if you wear them, like after a few hours they're going to unravel on you. Again, body and clothes. Jackets that were literally made out of 3 or 4 times the material, required crazy stitching, were super hard and super stiff and hard to move in, hurt the body to even move in. Jackets that hurt the body were also made. Jackets with titanium elbows and things like that. Again, body and clothes, relationship between it, commentary. Pants with animal blood smeared on the inside because of innovation with, not wanting to do chemical dyeing and stuff like that, trying new techniques. Sweaters made out of pig intestines, and overall just a rejection of the fashion system and an obsession with fashion, just crazy stuff in general. Now, the rejection of the fashion system plus an obsession with fashion can only result in something just anti-commercial. In his own words, avant-garde is advanced and individual thinking. The exact translation from French means before the crowd of mass. Therefore, it can never be trendy or fashionable. Before the last category, more designers that kind of identify in this one, I would say, are Helmut Lang and Margiela, who both famously left fashion because of their disdain for the system and how things were turning and how things were run and how they were treated. Shuli Recht also is kind of in this conversation, and he's conversational like Carl Christian Paul in making pieces speaking about the relationship between body and clothes. He made a glove made out of the skin of like this Icelandic shark, where if you push your hand in the glove, oh, that sounded so crazy just a while ago. When you put your hand in the glove, there are small like micro needles on the skin of the shark, and when you put your hand in the glove and you're trying to pull it out, all of the needles like turn inward and impale your hand, so you literally can't take it out of the glove. So you can only wear the glove one time, and taking the glove off would mean taking your hand off with it. Craig Green also goes into this category. People don't really get Craig Green firsthand, even though it's not that hard to understand. But Craig Green's like approach to design as well is just very jarring, and it's not even like from a clothing standpoint, if that makes sense. Moving on to the last category, we have what I like to call the in-betweeners. These are the designers that made lots of money, all while keeping their artistic integrity and still blazing powerful, bright, flaming trails behind them. We're going to start with the least powerful designer in this category, J.W. Anderson. Again, he is not in the same echelon as the two designers that's about to come after him, but I do feel he's like a really good modern day example. So let's talk about J.W. Anderson. We have a lot to talk about with J.W. Anderson. J.W. Anderson is a British designer that began in spring summer 2008 and is big on including art in his clothing. The art either sparked his ideas for a collection or helped execute or illustrate his ideas for the collection. oftentimes both. He was a very critically and commercially successful designer early on in his years, and he became the creative director of the underwear company Sunspell in 2010, where he would push a brand's image and numbers forward and funnel the money into his own brand for the first time in his career. The second time was a really successful 53 garment collaboration with Topshop in 2012. The third time was when he was appointed as the creative director of Loewe in September 2013. Now, before J.W. Anderson went to Loewe were known as like old and stuffy and boring, and they weren't making that much money. However, he did breathe life back into Loewe, all while having critical acclaim and a few it bags here and there for both Loewe and his eponymous label J.W. Anderson. And now Loewe is one of the most relevant, popular brands in the world, and it's also uncoincidentally owned by LVMH, which is why they have K-pop ambassadors and all these other super big celebrities going to their shows and wearing them to the Met Gala, etc., etc. More of his successful collaborations include Uniqlo, APC, and Converse. That's for his own brand, not Loewe. Now, the Converse one was super controversial because he actually designed the Runstar hike shoes that you all know. His collaboration was originally sold as a collab, but after a year or so, they took off his tags and they took off his name out of all of it and decided to start selling the design as their own shoe, and he was furious about it. And I don't know, like, I think he sued. I'm not sure if he sued, but that's insane, and they didn't get enough backlash that they deserved. He also had help from hit pieces on celebrities like Alexa Chung in his Topshop collaboration Bat Sweater when it came out, and Harry Styles wearing a colorful cardigan from Spring/Summer 2020 for a rehearsal performance before going on the Today Show. This particular instance blew up like crazy on TikTok during the lockdown, and the brand J.W. Anderson even released instructions on how to make your own version of the Harry Styles cardigan because it was so popular. Yeah, his money is always right. Like, always get that bag, you know. For his artsy side, his work kind of differs, whereas his work at Loewe is more suitable and a bit less crazy in terms of the ideas and execution for his own label. For his runway debut in autumn-winter 09, he showed typical women's clothing in an androgynous way on men, but it was horribly received and he almost quit fashion because of the feedback, but it was groundbreaking. This is an overarching theme for his designs going forward. It's usually gender fluid, along with sometimes wacky, playful, and often incorporating artwork or literary arguments and discourse around art. And for a lot of people, his work is very divisive. You either love it or you hate it. I personally love everything he does. He's so good. Now, for his Spring/Summer 2025 J.W. Anderson show, it was called Real Sleep, and it was based off of a hypnotherapy session where you fall asleep and the clothes begin to grow into strange forms with strange proportions. This includes a blown up bubble-like leather bomber jacket, or a loafer bag, or a shirt with balloons on the front, or a British house turning into a knit piece. Shameless plug, I actually did review J.W. Anderson Spring/Summer 25 on this channel if you want to go watch that. For Loewe's latest collection, J.W. Anderson was inspired by the artworks of Paul Thek, Peter Hujar, Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and Carlos Scapa, who made a spinning top, the painting Shoe for Elizabeth, the Argyle chair, coat rack, and an easel, respectively. Oh my god, that was such a weird sentence. Please understand what I just said. But these were not all the inspirations, but according to Loewe's show notes, the creation of these different artworks was an exercise in narrative association. All of these pieces were elevations of the mundane, everyday objects. J.W. Anderson was inspired by this approach, and as a result, most of his looks of this collection, especially the opening number of suits, was meant to be, in his words, razor sharp. They were exceptionally tailored commonplace suits and golden dress shoes. You get the idea. They were supposed to be like the top of the line basics, you know what I mean? He was also inspired by Susie Sontag's book Against Interpretation, where she said that interpretation is the revenge of intellect upon art, and that instead of always, putting an imposed meaning on the art so that the viewer can only interpret it in that light, you should make them interpret it in a more sensible and hedonistic way, just enjoying it for what it makes them feel or what it looks like, instead of trying to intellectualize everything. And he was also influenced by that because he himself said he doesn't want to over-intellectualize his work. He has also won countless of accolades, like being the first designer to win the British Fashion Council Menswear and Womenswear Designer of the Year award in the same year in 2015. He won Womenswear again in 2017. He won the Emergent Talent Award in 2012 and the CFDA International Designer of the Year in 2023. Stacked. He's one of the best designers out right now. I think he's in the lead in a lot of ways, and I think he's just perfect. I don't think he puts a foot wrong, and he's been good for so many seasons straight. Love him. Number 2, Alexander McQueen. Everybody's favorite British designer. Should be. unless it's Galliano. And if it's Galliano, I'm questioning you. But where to start, man? Obviously iconic, very autobiographical. Themes in his design include abuse being used by the industry, empowering women, technology and fashion, and of course exceptional tailoring, because he was Savile trained and he trained under the Italian designer Romeo Gigli for some time. A big misconception about McQueen was that he was just straight art and he never made money. No, even in one of his first collections, Nihilism, the one sparked by Chalayan, he actually had a lot of logo t-shirts, and we all know that logo t-shirts make a lot of money, you know, like word shirts like Alexander McQueen, those make money. He did underwrite that show though, so you know, money wasn't there yet. He often borrowed money from people like Isabella Blow and others to go to CSM and produce collections as well. He had no money to fix his teeth and they rotted and fell out while he would be eating sometimes. But after the success of Birds in spring summer 1995, Io Bocci, a London-based Italian fashion agent who worked for the likes of JPG and Anne de Millimeter, gave him a contract that guaranteed distribution for 15 years and manufacturing agreements. The distribution deal was a deal with a Japanese company called Bus Stop, which helped with international sales. That's important. The first time his company got into the black, meaning they were not owing or maybe even profitable, was after spring-summer 1996 show The Hunger, where he received $400,000 in orders. His London PR assistant, Kim Blake, said that the complete turning point for the brand was when they secured a sponsorship from American Express for a figure close to 6 figures for the Dante Autumn-Winter 1996 show. This evidently showed, as you know, Dante being a higher production because, you know, more money was available to make it better, raked up more than £1 million in orders, half of that coming from Japan. My phone didn't totally just die. Perhaps the biggest financial boost for McQueen was when he became the creative director of Givenchy after Galliano went to Dior on October 14, 1996. Galliano was previously at Givenchy. Bringing Gods and Kings by Dana Thomas into the fray because I have some quotes I need to quote. He only took the job, he said, because I decided to sink that big money into my own company to take on more staff. The Givenchy position gave me both credibility and the funding that I needed. As you should. That's a blueprint for so many designers nowadays. Like Peter Doe, he literally said that the helmet line money helped him out so much because Peter Doe has been open about like his financial struggles. So getting a creative director job can literally help your own brand so much. I'm sure Matthew Williams did the same thing when he went to Givenchy for Alix. In a more dramatic light, due to how McQueen was being treated at Givenchy by Bernard Arnault, especially in comparison to Galliano at Dior, he built up a deal with Tom Ford and Domenico De Sole of the Gucci Group behind Bernard Arnault's back and sold 51% of his company for £25 million. Reportedly 2.5 times more than his annual revenue at that time at October 2001. It was to spite Arnault and it was right under his nose. After this move, McQueen used lots of that money to fine-tune his own brand. That at the time, Barney's women's fashion director Julie Gilhart was so shook at the quality of the new McQueen samples that she tripled the buying budget at Barney's for his upcoming show. After McQueen's death, his estate had an estimated £16 million of worth. Sorry for the big gap in information. Sorry if the ending was abrupt, but as you can see, by the 2000s, by 1996 really, his business was well successful. And keep in mind, inflation was nowhere near as bad as it was back then. So these numbers that I'm telling you, like these £400,000, these £1 million, this was some serious money. That would be serious money nowadays. So McQueen was very, very, very much successful commercially. Now his artistic side was way more evident and celebrated and talked about and known. He was a Savile apprentice and worked under Romeo Gigli for some time. He was often misunderstood by the press. His Highland R-word collection, I'm not going to say that word, I don't want to get demonetized. It was so misinterpreted by the press. They thought, basically, he didn't like how England always romanticized Scotland heritage like tartan and other Scotland imagery like Vivienne Westwood. He didn't like when she did that because he was like, England stole these things from Scotland. They pillaged our homeland. They pillaged, because McQueen had Scottish blood in him. He was like, they pillaged the whole entire place and stole from them and now they're flaunting around our culture. That's not cool. He didn't like that at all. So he sent a more realistic, provocative depiction of Scotland on the runway, you know, with women walking around looking all dazed and confused, clothes torn, bloody, messed up hair, messed up makeup, other horrific scenes to show the reality of what England did to Scotland. But the press didn't like it at all, and McQueen lashed back at them. But according to McQueen's ex-boyfriend Andrew Groves, he was actually very upset because that show was originally about him and that the press didn't get it, so that made him really especially upset because it wasn't just about Scotland, it was about him, because McQueen was a victim of sexual abuse. For La Poupée, spring-summer 1997, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, McQueen commissioned his friend and accessories designer Sean Lean to make a square metal frame with manacles on each corner to bound the wearer by the elbow and feet and force them to crab walk around. He commissioned the supermodel at the time, Deborah Shaw, to wear it. I know what you're thinking. Slavery, slavery! Even Deborah Shaw asked about it. Going back to the book real quick. Dana Thomas, please save me. Well, she responded, what's the history behind it? Is it a reference to slavery? No, God, he insisted. Okay, some of the information that I left out. The collection was mainly based on the work of Hans Bellmer, which was a German poet and artist that made a lot of weird dolls. It was a doll project talking about the female body and also lashing out against the German fascism of the time. Now, with that being said, he told her about Bellmer, how he came up with the doll project in part as a response to German fascism and his obsession with control and perfectionism. That his work was subsequently labeled by the Nazis as degenerate, and that he was forced to flee to Paris where he was embraced by the Surrealists. The frame, McQueen said, was a commentary on all of that: constraint, Aryan beauty, surrealism, and what he saw as the fascist dictates of fashion, the rules of taste, and what was acceptable by a group of people he deemed bourgeois and boring. Shaw listened to McQueen's explanation of Bellmer and the Surrealists and had a good think about it. She knew that if the frames were about slavery, the shackles would have been around the ankles and wrists, not the thighs and biceps, and attached to chains, not a frame. She found McQueen's setup more artistic than domineering. Alright, she said, let's do it. When she tried the piece on, she says now, I felt like my body was in a picture frame. She did not feel fettered like a slave. I'm proud of my heritage and my race, she insists, and I would never do anything that would be humiliating. So yeah, that's just another example of McQueen's execution. And also his reference point was really specific. You can tell McQueen was very well studied. He was into literature, going to museums and stuff like that. He was well studied outside of fashion. Just another example of his artistic, mind. But of course, journalists still thought it was about slavery, and honestly, I'm just gonna say straight up, they're not that crazy. Because if they didn't know about Hans Bellmer, it would obviously look crazy for her to open that show as an African American woman in a metal frame, crab walking down the runway, But oh well. This frame is a great example of how people would also wonder, how would I wear it? This isn't fashion. How would I wear it? Like, do you think he's about to be selling that for $5,000 trying to make people wear that? Like, be for real. It was clearly not for sale. It was a narrative machine. The other show we're going to be talking about is Deliverance, Spring-Summer 2004. Back to the book. The inspiration was Sidney Pollack's monumental 1969 drama, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? A film about Depression-era characters in a months-long dance marathon. It seemed to be an allegory for McQueen's life and career. It began with an MC announcing the competition with a half-dozen couples, a mix of professional dancers and models, the men in muscle shirts and baggy pleated trousers, the women in 1930s style suits, day dresses, and delicate sequin and beaded bias-cut gowns, ballroom dancing across the wooden floor to Duke Ellington's Take the A Train. As the music amped up to a disco beat, so did the moves: tango, rumba, foxtrot, the chiffon skirts swishing with each twirl. After 10 minutes, the lights briefly went down, signaling a second act. Out came the models and dancers, the men in tank tops, shorts, and sneakers, the women in flouncy floral day dresses and heels, and they ran as couples arm in a huge large oval, as if it were a track and they were in a race. They ran and ran, pushing each other and stumbling until they were panting and collapsed in a heap. Then came the closing act, the dance marathon finalists. The women dancers were visibly exhausted and disheveled and began to flail about madly, their male partners holding them up or dragging them off into the darkness. Eventually one remained, a redhead in a silver lame column. She carried on, wobbling and lurching in the spotlights until she fell to the floor, crumpled and lifeless. The lights went dark. Absolutely insane. Of course, that was an allegory for McQueen's career, like how could it not be? The number 13 show, Spring-Summer 2009. The model for this show was Shalom Harlow. Now, the number 13 show was a regular fashion show from the start till about the finale, where Shalom stood on this circular panel in the ground that spun around, and two robot arms were around her, and then they whirred to life and started inspecting her, and she was looking around all confused, and then after a little bit, the robot arm started to spray the dress all around with green and black ink, and Shalom was basically trying to protect herself or act attacked because the robotic arms were destroying the beautiful white creation of the dress. And this was of course a commentary on technology and fashion all the way through. Horn of Plenty Fall Winter 2009 is a commentary on overconsumption in fashion forced by overproduction of clothes, and this show is so good. The set had a huge pile of car parts, old computers, televisions, and leftover props from McQueen's previous shows in the middle, and the runway was cracked glass, a commentary on self-obsession, Reed and Thomas. The first look and a few more after that were a parody of Yves Saint Laurent's work, a big factor in democratization of fashion when he created his Rive Gauche line in 1966, and that was one of the first ever ready-to-wear lines, and ready-to-wear kind of sparked the end of couture and the democratization of fashion. It kind of added onto it after licensing. It didn't spark it. Like, what sparked it was licensing. McQueen's longtime friend and collaborator, the legendary hat maker Philip Treacy, designed garbage bag, trash can lid, umbrella, soda can, car wheels, and more types of headpieces. Models had excessive lipstick, which I believe was a symbol of greed. A lot of the last dresses were huge numbers with excess pieces and feathers on them. This was a ready-to-wear show, and it is better than so much couture nowadays. It's not even funny. Bringing it back to Kim Jones, man, he couldn't even imagine, like, he couldn't even dream, like, of himself making a collection like this. He probably couldn't even imagine himself doing something like this. No hate to Kim Jones, but there's levels to this, bro. But yeah, that's Alexander McQueen. God bless him. Rest his soul. One of the GOATs, literally one of the greatest of all time, one of the most talented creative directors when it comes to getting beside a sewing machine and doing the work. Absolutely brilliant, absolute GOAT, man. Lastly, we are going to speak of the one woman you guys know was gonna come when we talked about balancing finance with artistic expression, Rei Kawakubo, Miss Comme des Garçons herself. Every time I bring her up, I say I'm not the most knowledgeable on her yet, because I'm not. I'm gonna do my best. She makes insane money off of the fusion labels and Dover Street Market. Comme des Garçons Play makes a ridiculous amount of money. The heart shoe is not to be messed with. We could talk about the many other diffusion lines like Comme des Garçons Homme, Comme des Garçons Homme Pleu, Comme des Garçons, Comme des Garçons, Comme des Garçons Shirt, Comme des Garçons Homme Deux, all the Junior Watanabe stuff and the stuff he's, overlooking. It's endless. Dover Street Market was made in 2004 in London and is owned by Rei Kawakubo and her husband and business partner Adrian Joff. Dover Street Market's main point of attraction and point of interest is an absolutely unique retail experience. Rei designs the spaces and invites artists from other brands to design their own spaces to further push the idea of diversity in the store. It holds higher reputation brands like Loewe, Junia, Nike, Gucci, Balenciaga, along with upcoming brands like Kidil, Noir K Ninomiya, Paulino Russo, and Doublet. I checked their financial statement, and I hope I read it correctly, because for the year ended May 31st, 2023, they had a turnover of £36 million, roughly 5 more than they had in 2022 with £31 million. All the money she makes from Dover Street Market and her diffusion labels enables her to make some of the most spectacular, grand, and boundless fashion of these times. Her main line, Comme des Garçons, is pretty much couture level stuff, like Met Gala stuff. Ask Rihanna. But before she got that rich, of course, she had to grind. She established her label in 1969 and was showing in Tokyo since 1975. She had her Paris Fashion Week debut in 1981, and the rest was history. She brought several questions on unseen methods of expression through clothes that the mainstream of fashion had never seen. Methods of deconstruction, almost exclusive use of black and gender-fluid clothing in an era where flamboyance and vain displays of fashion were dominating the zeitgeist. This is extremely brief, I'm sorry about that, but I know a lot of people say that Margiela did everything already. But people, if we're gonna be real, it all goes back to Rei Kawakubo. A lot goes back to Margiela, but who do you think he went to? No, a lot goes back to Margiela, but a lot goes back to Rei Kawakubo. A lot of people in general go back to Rei Kawakubo. So many students of Rei Kawakubo, people who she lifted up, pushed forward, like Chitose Abe, I think that's her name, for Sakai, Junya, like Jun Takahashi, she was a big champion of him as well, and many others. Norkei Nanamiya, currently on the rise. Many others. I think she's like the only designer after the end of the Balenciaga super skill couture era of designers that has a really good strong case for the GOAT. Now McQueen and Margiela have their cases, I would say personally, but I think Rei just has such an insane like CV as well as this influence and importance. Like, shout out to McQueen and Margiela, but Rei Kawakubo is the one. She epitomizes the balance of making money in fashion and the expression of the self that totally regards all commerciality. God bless Mama Rei Kawakubo. If you want to throw Rick in this category, you can as well. Nobody would stop you. Yeah. It's getting super dark now. I'm glad I'm finished. There are so many other designers that can go in every other category that I mentioned, but no, the video is over. Most of the commercial designers don't get remembered. The super artsy ones usually influence the in-betweeners and become streets won't forget type of designers, and the in-betweeners stand the test of time and become absolute legends. In my opinion, this is going to be so annoying to edit, but the video is over. Thank you all for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know if I got too many things wrong. Let me know what I did get wrong, what you liked about the video, what you didn't like. I love comments. I love discourse. Please leave a comment, say something. Thank you all for the support. It never goes unappreciated. Bye.